General Audience number 131 of November 14th, 1984. The Gift of Reverence. In the light of the encyclical Humanae Vitae, the fundamental element of conjugal spirituality is the love poured out in the hearts of the spouses as a gift of the Holy Spirit. See Romans chapter 5, verse 5. In the sacrament, the spouses receive this gift together with a particular consecration. Love is united with conjugal chastity, which, manifesting itself as continence, realizes the inner order of conjugal life together. Chastity means living in the order of the heart. This order allows the development of the effective manifestations to the extent and in the meaning proper to them. In this way, conjugal chastity is also confirmed as, quote, life by the Spirit. See Galatians chapter 5, verse 25, according to St. Paul's expression. What the apostle had in mind is not only the energies within the human spirit, but above all the sanctifying influence of the Holy Spirit and his particular gifts. At the center of conjugal spirituality, therefore, stands chastity, not only as a moral virtue formed by love, but equally as a virtue connected with the gifts of the Holy Spirit, above all with the gift of reverence for what comes from God, donum pietatis. This gift is what the author of Ephesians has in mind when he exhorts the spouses to, quote, be subject to one another in the fear of Christ, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21. Thus, the inner order of conjugal life, which allows the effective manifestations to develop according to their right extent and meaning, is a fruit not only of the virtue in which the spouses exercise themselves, but also of the gifts of the Holy Spirit with which they collaborate. In some passages, especially Humanae Vitae paragraphs 21 and 26, when it discusses specifically conjugal ascesis, or the commitment to acquire the virtues of love, of chastity, and of continence, Humanae Vitae speaks indirectly about the gifts of the Holy Spirit, to which the spouses become sensitive as they mature in virtue. This corresponds to the vocations of the human person to marriage. These two, who, according to the most ancient expression of the Bible, will be one flesh, Genesis chapter 2, verse 24, cannot realize such a union on the level of persons, communio personarum, except through the power that come from the Spirit, and precisely from the Holy Spirit, who purifies, enlivens, strengthens, and perfects the powers of the human spirit. Quote, it is the Spirit that gives life. The flesh is useless. John chapter 6, verse 63. It follows from this that the essential lines of conjugal spirituality are from the beginning inscribed in the biblical truth about marriage. This spirituality is also from the beginning open to the gifts of the Holy Spirit. If Humanae Vitae exhorts the spouses to persevering prayer and sacramental life, saying, let them draw from the source of grace and love in the Eucharist, let them have recourse with humble perseverance to the mercy of God, which is poured forth in the sacrament of penance, Humanae Vitae paragraph 25, it does so inasmuch as it is mindful of the Spirit who gives life, 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 6. The gifts of the Holy Spirit, and in particular the gift of reverence for what is sacred, seem to have a fundamental meaning here. This gift sustains and develops in the spouses a singular sensibility for all that in their vocation and shared life carries the sign of the mystery of creation and redemption, for all that is a created reflection of God's wisdom and love. For this reason, this gift seems to initiate man and woman particularly deeply into reverence for the two inseparable meanings of the conjugal act, which the encyclical speaks about. See Humanae Vitae, paragraph 12, in relation to the sacrament of marriage. Reverence for the two meanings of the conjugal act can fully develop only on the basis of a deep orientation to the personal dignity of what is intrinsic to masculinity and femininity in the human person, and inseparably in reference to the personal dignity of the new life that can spring from the conjugal union of man and woman. The gift of reverence for what has been created by God expresses itself precisely in such an orientation. Reverence for the twofold meaning of the conjugal act in marriage, which is born from the gift of reverence for God's creation, manifests itself also as a salvific fear, as the fear of violating or degrading what bears in itself the sign of the divine mystery of creation and redemption. It is this fear that the author of Ephesians speaks about. Quote, be subject to one another in the fear of Christ, Ephesians chapter 5, verse 21. While such salvific fear is immediately associated with the negative function of continence, that is, with resistance against concupiscence of the flesh, it also manifests itself, and in increasing measure as this virtue gradually matures, as a sensibility full of veneration for the essential values of conjugal union, for the two meanings of the conjugal act, or, speaking in the language of earlier analyses, for the inner truth of the mutual language of the body. Based on a profound orientation to these two essential values, the meaning of the union of spouses is harmonized in the subject with the meaning of responsible fatherhood and motherhood. The gift of reverence for what God has created makes the apparent contradiction in this sphere disappear, and gradually overcomes the difficulties stemming from concupiscence, thanks to the maturity of the virtue and the power of the gift of the Holy Spirit. If the issue is the problematic of so-called periodic continence, or the recourse to natural methods, the gift of reverence for the work of God helps at the deep level of principle to reconcile human dignity with the natural rhythms of fertility, that is, with the biological dimension of the femininity and masculinity of the spouses, a dimension that also has its own meaning for the truth of the mutual language of the body in conjugal life. In this way, also, what is oriented not so much in the biblical sense, but directly in the biological sense, to conjugal union of the body, finds its humanly mature form thanks to life according to the Spirit. The whole practice of the honorable regulation of fertility, which is so strictly tied to responsible fatherhood and motherhood, is part of Christian conjugal and family spirituality, and only if one lives according to the Spirit does it become interiorly true and authentic.